to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Ed Delia, President of Delia Associates, a B2B brand and growth firm based in Whitehouse, New Jersey. As a second generation leader of the firm, founded by his father, and Ed and his team serve a broad range of manufacturers in a variety of market sectors, helping them to use brand power to accelerate growth. And that is what we will learn from Ed today. Welcome to the show, Ed.
Thanks so much for having me, AJ. Great to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure a lot of Indian people will understand, a lot of business people, especially small businesses, B2B guys will understand more from you about this. And not only in India, but across the globe where the show is going right now, and later in audio as well as text, people will learn a lot from you. So coming down, what we will be talking about, how to accelerate B2B sales through brand power. My first question to you, Ed, is how should a B2B organization think about growth, especially if it's a small business and starting out? Should they be focusing on sales or building brand and brand power?
Well, one would always say that a branded entity is far easier to grow and gain traction than an unbranded entity. Because when you have a brand and you stand for something that's unique, simple, memorable, and distinct, it's a lot easier for people to remember you, to think about you, to refer you, and ultimately utilize your products or services. Where I think a lot of the small to middle market and even some larger players get stuck is there are so many different channels to growing an organization. And it's sometimes dangerous to put too much into the pot, if you will, to try to do too many things all at once. So we're big proponents of, no, let's do 3 to 5 things, but let's do them exceptionally well. Let's get very focused. Let's get organizational alignment around 3 to 5 growth strategies that we can really sink our teeth into and execute on with excellence. And we're going to use some brand power to drive those 3 to 5 strategies. So that's how we assess it, and that's how we recommend.
Right, Ed. And let's go a bit simpler in our discussion for the larger audience, and if they want to understand, because a lot of people want to be entrepreneurs, want to go their own way, achieve their dreams. How would you define for them what exactly is a B2B brand? And then we'll come to the bigger questions here.
Sure. So there's many definitions of what is a brand, and people have been answering this for years. So we have a very simplified definition. We say that a B2B brand is unique times 3. It's a unique entity with a unique offering to a unique audience. And by unique, I mean it's unlike anything else, right? So it's absolute distinction. A unique entity that's providing a unique offering to an equally unique audience that has a certain need set that can be fulfilled by that brand. So unique times 3 is our definition.
Right, Ed. So now let's talk about accelerating growth for the B2B brand or B2B company. How should you get started there? And you talked about capabilities presentation. Is it that they are not able to present their capabilities better? What exactly is this capabilities present and a presentation, and how is it related to their growth, sales, as well as the building of their brand?
Sure. We see the capabilities presentation as one of the key components in the B2B salesperson's arsenal when it comes to expressing their brand. Second, maybe to their website, which is really the first window that a prospect or an interested party might take to look into a company brand that they don't know. But the capability stack is really the opportunity to take the prospect on a journey. Where a lot of people go wrong is they present that capabilities. It's all about us. Here's who we are. Here's what we do. Here's why we're great. Here's all the things that we can do. And it's just this dump of information. And what's missing there is the prospect or the audience. So we tend to turn that particular tool on its head and say, no, what is it about you? What are your issues? Let us take a stab at that. And here's some issues that you may be having. And before we tell you everything about us, let me show you how we solve those issues. So we tend to bring case studies right up in front in a capabilities presentation. And then after we've taken them on a journey and we've proven, hey, we understand your issues, we've just proven that we can solve those issues. Now we're going to tell you a little bit about us. And one of the things that even the most accomplished sales professionals often forget to omit in a capabilities presentation, and it's because I think a lot of people lose sight of what's the point of that exercise. It's to get to a next step. That's the only goal. And so you begin with the end in mind, and you make sure, and we actually put this into decks that we build for our clients. Next steps. Here's what's going to happen next. We're going to talk further. We're going to put together a proposal. We're going to meet with other parties to get more information. Whatever it is, there's got to be a next step, or else what's the point? So it's one step in a journey to a next step. And that's a part that a lot of people miss, is that, okay, here's our presentation deck. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, we'll see you. No. We want to end somewhere with another beginning and another opportunity to continue the discussion, because that's what ultimately carries them forward to the selling opportunity.
Right. Ed. So in terms of capabilities presentation, is it more relevant for companies with services or with products? How does that work?
A capabilities presentation can be for a company that's selling either products or services or some combination. There's especially a value to service companies, because at point of first engagement, your deliverable is invisible, right? It's a service. You can't, I can't pull it off the shelf and say, here it is. Do you want it in red or blue? Like a product, it's invisible. So when you're selling an invisible, the more things you can do from a brand standpoint to create tangible, the better. So oftentimes for a service business, we might brand certain processes and create visual cues and tangible cues to make that service business come into the physical world. So it's especially important for service businesses.
Okay. So now coming to the accelerating B2B growth with brand power. What is this in case of brand power when you are some people call it very much associated with your brand identity, brand image. So how do you maintain that balance because here you are talking about using that to accelerate your growth. Many people want to protect their brand identity, protect their brand value. And here we are talking about almost like encashing that power to increase your sales. How do you manage that and walk that thin line? Sometimes if you do it too much, it can impact your brand image and almost your brand power may get reduced. How does that work? Is it as simple? Is it that I am not understanding it fully? Is it a very simple thing to do, or is there a lot of understanding that goes on between bringing that fine balancing? Because you see a lot of there are brand custodians in company. They have their own job to do. How do these things work in smaller companies? Maybe not too much, but then they also need to be very aware of these things.
So for starters, and there's a couple of areas where I think companies lose their way when it comes to their brand. One is consistency. So if you have a message and your message is about, your brand message or your brand promise is about innovative insight, everything you do should reinforce innovative insight. From your brand identity to your marketing communications materials, to your key messages, to your selling scripts, it's got to be brought across, what we call the touch points of the brand. So the touch points are basically, or branding is everywhere we can consistently deliver our brand message. That could be on how you greet someone on the phone, what your trade show or event experience looks like, what your selling materials look like, how you signature an email. Everything has to reinforce the brand. So that's where some people go wrong, is they become inconsistent and they forget to continue to reinforce and reaffirm that brand message. When companies do it well, and this is when it gets exciting, AJ, is when you hear a prospect actually play back, well, you're the innovation experts, that's why we came to you. So they're playing back the brand message that's been told to them. So I don't think you can ever go too far in reaffirming your brand message and position. Again, if it's truly distinct, if it's a unique offering, and if it's going to a unique entity, you really can't go wrong. What you're doing is continuing to reaffirm and evolve that message everywhere that you can. And lo and behold, over time, people will say, yeah, they're the best at that, because now the promise has become real, or it's become real in their minds, and in their minds, that brand holds particular value and relevance to them. So that's where you ultimately want to get to. And that's when it really starts to accelerate.
Right. So who does this brand power stay with? Or who controls this brand power? Is it the founder? Is it the CEO? Is it employees, the managers? Who holds this brand power? And would you like to suggest ways how one can use this brand power responsibly? Because there comes a time that your brand image gets dented by one thing or the other, and then you work on rebranding. So those can be, if it is for a positive reason, maybe your product line or services line have expanded and you want to rebrand, that's a different thing. But if it has been dented negatively, then it's a different. That's why I asked, who does this brand power rest with, and what are the things that owners or people who have this responsibility, they should take care? How can they take this much more seriously so that it remains intact?
It's a great question. So one of the steps in our process, we call it internal brand adoption. And that step is basically explaining if there's been like a rebranding or a brand change to the entire population. This is what the new brand is. This is what it means. This is what it means for you. This is how to apply it and use it every day. So on one sense, everybody that represents that brand, especially by today's standards, where there, even for CEOs, there are no more ivory towers. CEOs are at all levels are transparent, they're accessible, they're reachable, right? So everybody in the organization, for an organization that is truly aligned to and around its brand, is a brand ambassador. In the smaller organizations, I'd say even the bigger ones, but in the smaller ones especially, oftentimes that CEO or that top executive is playing the role of lead brand ambassador, where they're out there representing the company and the company's best interests. So it's especially important for them to understand the brand promise, because ultimately it's often their company if they're the founder or the exclusive owner. So they must be very attentive to the brand because they're out there speaking on behalf of the brand every day, usually. So that's very important. But organizationally across the board, everybody's got an opportunity, and I would say has some accountability to be true to their own brand and understand what that means. And in some organizations, they don't. They don't really fully get it. So that's why we do that, to explain it to them. And sometimes we'll re-explain it to them. So eventually they get it.
Absolutely. And when they go wrong, they need people like you. So I'll come to that part, your details for the audience and for the companies like those. But before that, in terms of the brand image or rebranding or rethinking your image, how does a brand know that it's time to rebrand or rethink their brand image? Because, and who tells them this? Is it people like you, or is it that when there are, no bouquets, only brickbats, and customers are almost at their doors shouting?
So there are 10 what we call 10 common triggers that lead to a rebranding. And rebranding is different than let's say a renaming, right? Renaming is a little different. But if the brand has changed over time, let's just say you're called ABC Bottle Company and you made bottles, but over time you moved away from bottles and now you make jars, but you're still called ABC Bottle Company. Well, the name's no longer relevant, right? So it's got to change. So the business has evolved beyond the brand. A lot of times, and this is probably the most common thing we see, is we call it the brand vision gap. The vision of the brand and where the brand is going has far exceeded, and sometimes the capabilities of the brand have far exceeded the original identity. So the identity, so this company, the company may have grown, they may have grown exponentially, yet they're still functioning off of a very small, a very mom and pop looking brand when they are anything but. We started working, there was a consulting firm, and when they first developed the brand, it was 2 people. It was a husband-wife team. Fast forward 7 years, they were 50 people strong, and they were still operating on a brand that looked like, something that was made at home. The brand obviously had outpaced the identity. And so when we rebranded them, it led them to a whole nother tier of growth. Now they're about 100 people strong and they're growing exponentially, but they needed that, because if you don't bring the brand up with the organization appropriately, it starts to become like running out, like with a parachute on your back. It's actually holding you back. And the marketplace might say, well, no, we can't consider that company. They're too small for us. They can't meet our needs the way we need our needs met. They're not a good fit. When that's not the case at all. It's just what they see, and what they experience from a brand standpoint. If they don't see what they need to see to qualify you as a potential provider, we often tell our people, we all know about the big fish on the line that got away. The ones that I'm worried about are the fish that are circling your bait, but they never bite, right? Because they don't think it's a fit. Those are the ones I'm worried about. Those are the opportunities you never had. So by being the strong brand that you are and casting that light out and doing it consistently, you make sure all the good big fish find your bait and get on the line.
Absolutely. So now we talked about the brand power, which is and the brand identity and all that stuff, which is with the company. Let's look at the brand perception part from the other part. And you are a frequent speaker. You're a guest lecturer at several regional colleges and universities, so you get to interact with the young people and teach them about all this branding and B2B sales and brand power. Now it's a fact, all this about Great Resignation and all these big brands and companies making news for the wrong reasons. How is this understanding of brands, which the young generation is understanding and deciding there? Because one of the good part, that brand power or your good brand will enable you for better talent recruiting.
Absolutely.
How would you want to put this part as the brand value, brand perception come together, and people who are not taking their understanding of their brand as seriously as they should understand about what pitfalls are there in the coming future, especially from the young generation who want to be associated with companies with a purpose, brands with a purpose, and not which leads to their joining the Great Resignation.
That is a fantastic point and a fantastic question, AJ. And that's probably since COVID, we've been hired as much more from, I'd say, an HR department than a marketing or sales department. And it's for the very reason that a lot of companies were faced with an interesting dilemma. They had more business than they knew what to do with. They couldn't find the talent to support the growth. And they were, in fact, turning down business because they didn't have enough talent to support the influx of business. The reason they didn't have enough talent was because they were not attractive brands to the emerging talent. And you're absolutely right. The emerging generation of workforce, it's not about a paycheck, right? It's not about a job. They want to have purpose and meaning in what they do, which means that if a B2B brand wants to attract the best candidates, they have to do a really good job of expressing not only that brand to future customers and current customers, but to future employees. Why is this a great brand to work for? Why is this a great destination for you? So a lot of work that we've started to do now is in the area of articulating and expressing core values and tying them directly into the brand identity and the brand promise. Because we recognize, at the heart, brand is all about building a relationship, right? It's an emotional relationship with a brand and its audience. Well, that relationship could be a prospective buyer. It could be a prospective investor. It could also be a prospective employee, right? It's all about relationships. And a lot of companies, especially in the manufacturing area, are really starting to wake up to that. And a lot of them are in a very scary place where a lot of their personnel are starting to age out or starting to hit retirement. And they're walking out of the doors of these manufacturing facilities with a lot of tribal knowledge that no one else has, a lot of skills that no one else has. And there's nobody coming behind them to take their place in many cases. And it's scary. It's scary. But if you walk into some of these environments, they look like the last time they updated the interior was like 1950. So why would a young person walk in there and say, "Yeah, this is my home, baby. I'm going to live. I'm going to work here for 20 years." No way. They're going to run right out. So I'm like, you've got to bring it into your environment. You've got to bring it into your culture. You've got to show them that there's a way forward, just like you would with a prospective client, right? Just like you would with them. The same ideas apply. And that's so important right now. And we are at such a critical juncture, especially in the US with manufacturing. A lot of these guys are starting and gals are starting to age out, and there's nobody coming to take their place. And it's scary.
Absolutely. And that is why they need people like you and a company like you, Delia Associates. You have, in the last 4 years alone, you guys have received over 50 industry awards for B2B brand and marketing effectiveness. That's a lot of awards. Ed, how did that happen? And so tell us about that, and how can people then connect with you and get the best of understanding about their brand and brand power, and how to use it effectively to get the best talent from the market.
Well, thank you, AJ. And I wish I could take all the credit for those 50 awards, but it's really a credit to my team. So in addition to myself, we're 12 people strong here at Delia Associates, and I've got a very incredible team. They're brilliant. They're great creatives. They understand business very well. They understand brand and creative very well. Really great technology as well to align and integrate. And they're super talented and great people. So I have to give them all the credit for that. I'm just the guy that, talks to you, right? But anybody that is interested in having a conversation can drop me an email at edelia@delianet.com or find me on LinkedIn. And where we usually start is with a brand assessment, and that's a complimentary service. So if somebody says, "Hey, I'm thinking about reshaping my brand or taking my brand the next level," we start with a brand assessment to see where they are at today and to assess where the opportunities lie. So it's a complimentary, there's no cost to it. And it's some candid advice from a brand expert about where they are and what they could be doing to elevate themselves and their brand, starting right now.
With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, AJ. It was great being with you today.